Hello and welcome back to a special episode of Snack Break, the perfect podcast to pop on while preparing your cup of tea or ideal snack or beverage. Today we're going to be discussing and reviewing, partially in non-spoilerific detail, and then later in full-blown spoilerific detail, Captain America: Brave New World, the latest cinematic outing for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I do just want to clarify before we launch into this episode, all these opinions are entirely my own, and, it's, in this case, they're just my opinions regarding a film. If you feel differently, that is totally fine. Please be kind to the comments. Okay, without further ado, enjoy the episode. Even for die-hard MCU fans such as myself, it's difficult to deny that Captain America: Brave New World lands at a pivotal time for the franchise's success. Recent other successes such as X-Men 97, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, Agatha All Along, and Deadpool and Wolverine have also been balanced by comparative commercial and critical flops such as The Marvels, Echo, and What If Season 3. This entry, the first in a year that promises to set the studio fully back on track, follows Sam Wilson, who has at this point settled into his role as Captain America following 2021 Disney Plus series Falcon and the Winter Soldier, as he, quote begins, finds himself in the middle of an international incident, quote ends, as he uncovers the master plan behind Thaddeus Ross's actions as president. The story is notably grounded, with little mention of the world-hopping multiversal shenanigans that have been integral to recent entries in the series, instead choosing to follow a supposedly complicated trail towards the aforementioned mastermind behind the striking action that blends up intense, dialogue-heavy scenes. I say supposedly complicated because although I'm not attempting to claim that I can do any better, I am really no professional writer, it does feel as though the movie loses itself in an attempt to recreate the mastery of previous series outings such as Captain America: The Winter Soldier and Civil War. The intricacy and tension, I should just mention, Civil War not being the 2024 A24 movie, but the 2016 Captain America movie, just always good to make that distinction. Very different movies. The intricacy and tension that made those films, the Captain America ones, not the A24 ones, such a highlight is often lacking here, with it replaced by occasionally cringe-worthy lines, pointless driving scenes. I mean, there is a lot of driving. I don't know why there's so much driving, but particularly in the first act, a lot of driving. And characters acting as though the political intrigue, which the film often lacks, is definitely there. We should definitely all feel very tense, and definitely feel very serious, and definitely all be on the edge of our seats about it. Definitely. And as if to add to the Winter Soldier straight-to-DVD sequelness of it all, there's even a Captain America, Falcon, and Black Widow trio. Why did they need to do this? All that being said, the movie does warm up, however, and although the opening act does consist largely of characters driving around and talking with supposed gravitas, as we mentioned previously, it does give way to some good content. Even if I feel that Sam Wilson is an S-tier side character and a B-tier main character, he is undoubtedly the right person to inherit the shield, something only further cemented by Mackie's performance within this movie. As for characters aside from Mackie and Ford, who, the latter of whom, serves as a constant source of quality throughout this movie, even if his character's writing isn't always quite spot on, I'm pretty meh for most of the other characters, with none enough to drastically heighten or detract from my overall enjoyment of the movie. The action, however, is definitely worth noting. Even if the actual fight choreography feels nothing out of the ordinary, really, appearances of Wilson's new suit, backed up by a nice little bit of side lore that I'm not going to spoil for you, but MCU fans will get pretty excited about, got me excited. At least partially. Our highlight, particularly in scenes regarding Celestial Island dogfights and soaring through the skies. Oh, and against criminals. Oh, and you know what? I really just loved all the suit stuff. The suit stuff is great. As for the visuals, they are largely pretty good, with a few angles and shots particularly enjoyable. And the little film nerd in me came out and just loved a few of the shots in there and camera work in there. So that's pretty great. As is the music. CGI isn't perfect throughout, though there are very few obviously jarring shots. It's an improvement from some past MCU outings that, I've had mixed CGI attempts. All in all, as much as I don't like to say what everybody else is saying, and everybody else does seem to be saying this, it is notably middle of the pack. Although the film has funds with the likes of Anthony Mackie, Harrison Ford and Tim Blake Nelson, who was pretty good, I thought, as the leader, again, sort of doing the best they can with the role, not to mention a hulking out president, which is really, really fun, it is ultimately let down by its inability to replicate the sheer intricacy and genuine tension that define the Captain America films as hallmarks of the MCU. It by no means damages the MCU's chance of a general public redemption. Again, I do want to say, I'm somebody who has been a lot more on the pro side of who's been a lot more on the positive side of a lot of the recent MCU outings. And I don't think this does, as I mentioned there, damage the MCU's chance of general public redemption that much. It even sets various pieces in place for much needed connective storytelling tissue. But it does make me slightly more nervous for Marvel's other potential hard hitters of the year. Thunderbolts, you've got a bit of work to do. It seems I should probably also address as one of the standout spoiler moments of the movie. It seems that I should address the post-credits scene. If you don't know, if you didn't stay for it, Captain America: A Brave New World did have one post-credit scene jammed right at the very end of all the credits. And I went to see this movie with 2 family members and a friend, none of which were super into the MCU, but the family members were under the impression that this would be 15 minutes of bonus content, which would be worth waiting for. So they were drastically disappointed by the fact that this was not 15 minutes of brand new content, but in fact under a minute. Was it even 30 seconds? So essentially within this trailer, the leader confirms the presence of, through all his leadery calculations, because that's what he does, he walks around talking about his probabilities and all that jazz. So he rocks up, or Sam Wilson rocks up rather, to the leader in jail. And the leader basically confirms that Sam Wilson will have to fight off against or attempt to protect. I believe he mentions, protecting the world, and then he's, evil. Soon you will have to protect multiple worlds. It's all that stuff, which essentially does confirm Avengers Secret Wars being as multiversal as everyone knew it was going to be. I mean, that is in no ways a secret. So it was, in many ways, it definitely isn't one of the standout post-credit scene. Scenes in the MCU, I certainly didn't get a sort of chill or excitement from it. It was just a little bit, okay, right, we sort of know that, and there's like a morsel of something in there that we can take away from that. But generally, there was nothing in there that I was too ecstatic, over the moon about. Certainly this, for me, I felt this pointed perhaps more in the direction of the Jonathan Hickman comic run compared to the 80s Secret Wars. I thought this went more in that direction, because obviously they've all got ties to this, but certainly the 2016 Secret Wars was, in my mind, more suggestive of something of the multiple worlds coming together, and the different heroes want to protect their worlds. And certainly that seemed to be what this was attempting to tap into. So whether that's some sort of hint about the origins of where Secret Wars is coming into, or it's just essentially, it's just teasing Secret Wars, isn't it? And I think we're certainly at quite an interesting point in the MCU to where it felt like we were never going to reach a point at which we'd be getting another Avengers movie, and we were never going to reach a point, certainly, towards where we'd be needing to set up that Avengers movie. We certainly, for a long time now, it's felt like we're still way off from that, but now realistically it is only just over a year and a few months until we get our next Avengers movie, as long as nothing changes on that front. And that is not only a crazy thought, but in terms of that's soon-ish, but it's crazy in that it doesn't really feel like we're that well set up for that. We've had a lot of content, a lot of stuff, Marvel and Disney and everyone involved changing plans and perspectives and all that jazz. And certainly, as I mentioned, there is a lot of stuff there. You've got enough heroes. We're no doubt about having the amount of heroes we need for Avengers Secret War, Doomsday and Secret Wars, but getting them together is where I think we need to focus on over the next little bit. And I think we are starting to move towards that. Obviously, we've got a lot of mention of the Avengers within this movie, which is very exciting. And certainly, I think Captain America: Brave New World was, and Thunderbolts will be very focused on getting that, having that as part of their motivation and game plan. And certainly, I think that shone through here. Additionally, within this movie, perhaps as expected, there is a good, decent bit of discussion regarding adamantium. This, of course, being the brand new. What was it? The silly line they described it as that I hadn't actually caught out, but it was mentioned on the Friends from Work podcast. Great MCU podcast if you haven't listened to it. I believe it was. It is even more indestructible than vibranium, which of course raises the question of how on earth could something be more indestructible than something else. But adamantium, of course, making up in part Wolverine's claws, and then being discovered within the Celestial and launching in part this arms race that leads to a lot of the core plot within this movie. So there's a lot of discussion regarding that. Of course, you've got as I mentioned, really quite the arms race coming into play, a lot of different nations claiming that they should own right to it. And at the end of the movie, it doesn't really, or I didn't think it came away particularly clear who's going to be getting that adamantium and how they're going to sort things out. Certainly, I'd imagine they'd be on very tense grounds there. And I mean, it's going to be the job, let's face it, it's going to be the job of the next new president of the MCU, because Ross ain't the new president anymore, to decide what they do with that. So as to how that will play into the future of things in the MCU, I don't know. There were a few other fun little mentions in there of MCU-related things. Bucky's appearance was most definitely a fun one. I do like the Bucky character, although he's not one of my favourite characters or anything. I do just like him. But it was nice to see him making an appearance. Of course, confirm that he is going to be a congressman, which I believe is brand new news. In addition to that, then he's going to be making an appearance, a pretty substantial appearance from the looks of things, in the Thunderbolts, and perhaps being involved with assembling them. Even if within the trailers, he certainly looked to be a lot more Winter Soldiers-esque than perhaps we've seen him for a good few years at this point, helped not just in part by his absence from some recent MCU projects, just because they haven't called for Bucky to be in them, not for any reason other than that, from my belief. Additionally, we have mention of the Wakandans and them being a very closed-off nation. That's everything we're used to. Of course, I do think that that Sam Wilson getting his suit from the Wakandans is a really nice move, and the way that plays into making the suit a little bit different, a little less armor, and explaining in parts, especially with the Tony Stark type figure taken out of the MCU and having all these sort of Stark type side tech dealers going on. It's certainly quite exciting to see, to be given some explanation as to how that could work. And I just love that sort of, as I mentioned earlier, connective tissue within the MCU. And it's certainly something that I think, with the amount of projects going on at the moment and that have been going on over the last few years, I believe it's something that can often be lost sight of. So a few mentions in there like that, and in addition to that, all the Avengers stuff, which, I mean, goes without saying, we've discussed that a decent bit. And also, there's not much to take from that other than what they're going to take from that. The Avengers are going to be back in action, and it looks like Sam Wilson's going to be the one to be assembling them. So lovely to have a few of those MCU-type mentions within there. One last tiny thing I do want to raise is the discussion regarding President Ross and Thaddeus, well, no longer President Ross. Thaddeus Ross, portrayed in this film by Harrison Ford. And I think it's interesting, actually, just as I've searched that character into Google, I do want to just do a little bit more digging here. I've just seen an article from Polygon, who wrote it, by Susanna Polo, titled, "I Have No Sympathy for Captain America Brave New World's Thunderbolt Ross," with the little tagline, "The filmmakers want us to feel so bad for him." I don't. And I will read that article once I finish recording, because certainly I felt myself falling into that camp somewhat. Although I can understand the motivation by the filmmakers for wanting to provide a little bit more backdrop to the Ross character, and having him as a sort of dual protagonist, possibly antagonist at times. It was really I think it's up to the observer how you sway that role and how he falls in the midst of all this. But I think at the end of the day, I did I did personally find his character to be a little bit up and down in the air. This is not helped only by the fact that, as Sam says himself, he split up the Avengers. For him to suddenly make a turn around and be, I want to reunite the Avengers. I could sort of understand, partially because it was under government control and all that motivation there. But aside from that, I did find his character to be, as I mentioned, a bit up and down. At one moment he was very much on Sam's side, the other he wasn't. And which side of the fence he sat on for the majority of the movie, I felt could switch position, not necessarily in terms of politics, but could switch position character-wise very quickly. On the one hand, as that article mentions, they do want us to feel, or the filmmakers want us to feel sorry for Ross, and they want to illustrate that he is a human person, but he is a human being with feelings and emotions. But at the end of the day, all I can really find is that, well, yes, he's a real human being, but equally, he's a politician, and he's a pretty horrible one at times. He's pleased at the end of the movie that Isaiah Bradley has made it out of jail. He's glad because he knows that Isaiah is an innocent man, and for that reason he knows that he deserves to not be in jail. But equally, for publicity reasons and for his own self-appearance, and partially Sam's, I guess you could say, but really for the benefit of his government, earlier in the film he basically just says, you're very naive, Sam. Bradley's going to jail, and there's nothing, I know he's innocent, but Bradley is going to jail, and that's just the way it's going to work. So, for that reason, there's my little rant done about Thaddeus Ross in this movie, although I do think Harrison Ford definitely brought a lot to this movie and did the best he could do with the role. Interestingly, on IMDb, on the cast list on Google, Harrison Ford is listed alongside the main row of Thunderbolts. Thunderbolts, of course, being Ross's nickname, Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross. And he's not actually listed as playing any character, and I'd be pretty shocked if he returns in this movie just to play a different character. We can presume either there'll maybe be some sort of flashback involving Ross, or what I think is more likely, some sort of small performance again, small appearance, from Ford. And although I don't know whether would Harrison Ford show up for the MCU just to have a small appearance, I don't really know. That's not something that I'm going to be particularly aware of. However, I do think it's looking more and more likely that Harrison Ford is going to be making a return, albeit not in the presidential role, as Thaddeus Ross in Thunderbolts. And hopefully more MCU projects after that, because he is very, very good. That just about concludes my thoughts regarding Captain America: Brave New World. And before we wrap the episode up, I do just want to clarify, these opinions are entirely my own. On the whole, I was, I didn't love this movie, but I really didn't hate it either. And I would say if you're an MCU fan, definitely do go see this movie, give it a shot, see what you think about it. What do you think about it? I would love to know. Please, either drop your thoughts in the comments on YouTube or now on Spotify, because you can do that apparently. And now there's random comments on Spotify. When did they announce that? I don't know. But it's there. Or you can drop us an email at hwsnackbreakpodcast@gmail.com. For now, though, I've been Bendigo Blue. This has been a Hungry Cat Bar production. Thank you very much for listening. See you soon. Stay safe. Bye.